All right, so we are live and we're going to be talking about pay-per-click advertising. And I am excited to be joined by not one, but two special guests this week. So we've got Tom Waghorn and George Meressa from Clear Ads, who will be clearing up any misconceptions anyone has about ads and sharing their perspective on how you can be more profitable with your Amazon ads, drive more sales, grow your business, and all that fun stuff. So we'll get into all that here in just a moment. My name is Kevin Sanderson. I am the VP of Marketing at My Amazon Guy. And I will give my two esteemed guests the opportunity to introduce themselves here in just a moment. But before I do, I just want to make sure, can you guys hear me? If you can, I'm always super paranoid about this. Completely irrational fear. But for those listening out in the internet lands, please, if you don't mind, giving us that little thumbs up icon, click the like button to let you like our audio, as well as maybe comments. And from time to time, I will reward participation. So,
yes, looks like you good.
Yeah, I got somebody. So Coco Malin says yes, which I'm sure is unrelated to Coco Melon, the internet kid show. Says yes, can hear me. So Coco Malin, email Kevin at myamazonguy.com. Let me know that you could hear me. And I'll give you access to one of our previous virtual summits that I hosted, including George was just a guest last week at the PPC Mastery Summit. So just email me and I'll give you access to one of our previous summits from the past. Maybe it'll be the one from last week, just because George was a guest on that. So Jeff also said he could hear. Pro Hall Cosmetics says yes. Amit is diving right into the questions, which I love. Which we'll get to your questions here in just a moment, folks. Susan gave a thumbs up, and Coco Melon said, "What's the email?" Kevin, this is my name. Kevin at myamazonguy.com. Let's do that. Kevin at myamazonguy.com. Just make sure you tell me that you're Coco Malin, and if you don't mind, let me know. Is that a play off of words of Coco Melon, or is that completely unrelated? It just sounds similar. So I would just be curious to know that. So with that, I'm going to let my guests introduce themselves. We've got Tom and George here from Clear Ads. So gentlemen, why don't you just take the floor here for a moment, introduce yourselves, and let us know what your experience is here in the world of ads.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, first of all, Kevin, for having me on. I guess as my banner says, my name is Tom Waghorn. I am an Amazon advertising specialist here at Clear Ads. I've been working with / for George for over 7 years now. And yeah, got a lot of experience coming from Google PPC, Amazon PPC, and yeah, dipped my toes into various other kind of social platforms as well. But yeah, I'm really excited to see what sort of questions are going to come my way. It's obviously a complete surprise. I've not been able to prepare for anything, so I'm looking forward to it.
You'll do just fine. I'm sure you'll do just fine. Especially with 7 years in the business. That's good.
Yeah, and there's not
George.
a beat, but
yeah, those beats are fine. You'll be fine. George.
I'm George, founder of Clear Ads. We've been going just over 13 years now. And as well as what Tom mentioned, we also do DSP. And we've actually kind of gone into full service recently too, because it's just so connected to the performance and outcomes that you get on PPC. So really looking forward to getting your questions and seeing how we can best help you to take your PPC to the next level.
Awesome. That's the goal when people come to this. So definitely, I know folks are looking to take their PPC to the next level. So we've got plenty of time to answer questions, but what ends up happening is every week we run out of time. Because what happens is people ask more questions, the algorithm thinks, oh, wow, there's a lot of people who are engaged in this live stream. So it starts sending more people to our live stream. And so we have disappointed people. That was kind of a tongue twister there, every single week. So I will go mostly in order of the questions that we get. Sometimes I go out of order, and it's nothing against anyone. So if anyone question bombs us with 6 questions, I probably won't get to all of them all at once, all at the same time, but we definitely want to answer your questions. So we'll get to some of the questions that are already starting to roll in. We do have a clarification, which I'm excited about. Coco Malin says, unrelated, it's just my YouTube channel for AI animated cartoons for kids. Primarily, I'm an e-commerce reseller. and has been in the business since 2020. So if you have kids and you're looking for AI generated animated cartoons, which I'm kind of curious to see that myself, go to the YouTube channel Coco. So with that, all right. Nabil asks, I have a phrase and an exact campaign for my top keywords. They're starting to not produce as well as they did a week ago. Is it time to make a broad campaign with the same keywords? Oh, that's which also I want to hear you guys' thoughts on how often should you make changes based on week-to-week performance?
I mean, I guess to answer your question, Kevin, I wouldn't overreact, and I would make sure that I'm not just looking at the last 7 days' performance, because there's so many different things that can affect your performance. It could be seasonality, there could be a deal period. Your competitors might have drastically reduced their price or put themselves onto a deal period. Like, you have to look at everything. You can't just look at your keywords and your campaign saying, well, it didn't do as well as last week, let's kill it off, or let's start a broad campaign, or let's start introducing the budgets astronomically, when there's so many things to look into. So you're right to look at the last 7 days, but also compare that to the last 30, the last 60, potentially even the same time last year. Like, the US has just come off of Mother's Day, and one of the trends we saw in a lot of our US accounts was performance was dipping. There were a lot of account managers in the office saying, has anyone else noticed this? Why is my account dying off over the weekend? Like, the spend's going, the sales are going. It's Mother's Day. There's a lot of people out there who are actually celebrating their mothers, spending time with their mothers from the Friday through to the Monday potentially, and they've got better things to do than go shopping on Amazon. Like, yeah, they want to give thanks and be grateful. So, take into consideration what's happening in the real world, as well as actually what might be happening on Amazon in your space, in your competition. So I don't know if it's immediately time to jump into a broad campaign. I would see what you can do to try and fix what's happening in your campaign. Like, is it just the first week that it's dropped off? Did you only launch this campaign a week ago? Before even introducing further campaigns, like, have a look at your bid. Like, is it below the suggested bid? Has your CPC come down? Like, potentially optimize those bids. Have a look at the placement bids before you start introducing broad, because the problem with broad is, you could bring in so many random, irrelevant, low quality traffic terms coming through that I don't know what your keywords are. And like, broad match and phrase match have actually changed how they operate in the last year, that it doesn't even have to be closely relevant. We had a search term the other day, which was just bebe, B-E-B-E as one word, which I can only assume was slang for baby. And that triggered our brand name in one of our campaigns. And that wasn't even relevant. So I would be hesitant to go into broad match straight away.
It used to be a clothing brand. I don't know if it's still around.
Yeah, maybe. But even then,
it was popular for women here in the States in like the 90s and 2000s. Well, maybe it still is. But maybe it's just because I'm out of the loop on what's popular these days.
Either way, none of the letters in that were even in the branded name that we.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny because it's contextually similar.
But you saying clothing, they are a clothing brand, so I don't know if
that's kind of crazy that maybe Reebok would show up if you were going after Nike.
Yeah, but. So I would be careful there. And if you are going to go into broad match, I would make sure that you're doing broad off of like the hyper specific keywords you've got. And I'm assuming they are if you're looking at your top keywords. Another question I would ask is, like, how have you segmented those campaigns? It looks like you've built a phrase and an exact campaign. If they're your top keywords and you've got a dozen of those keywords, if you've got the budget to allow yourself to do that, I'd recommend, at least for exact, segmenting those in single keyword campaigns. They've got their own budget. It means they're not going to be kind of interrupted or that budget eaten into by other keywords in those campaigns. And start looking at your placement modifiers as well. If you go into that ad group and look at the placement modifier tab, you'll be able to see how that campaign actually does on an individual placement level. And if you have these keywords in their own singular keyword campaigns, you'll actually know exactly how well that keyword does in those placements, whether that's top of search, product pages, or now rest of search. You can actually influence the placement modifier adjustment for rest of search. And you can do that methodically. You don't have to immediately go in at 100%. You can go up to 900% if you want. Don't do that from the word go. Like, start to increase it by 10%, build up your confidence. And as soon as you start seeing those ACOSs be where you want them to be, that gives you a bit more authority to start increasing them bigger jumps. But yeah,
good stuff.
Can I just
Please.
add as well, in terms of what you say regarding not doing so well? Is that the ACOS? Is that the total amount of sales that you're getting through? Just be wary as well for those who are looking at just ACOS when they're deeming a successful keyword and an unsuccessful keywords. Really good to consider the number of sales that comes through that term per week, and also the conversion rates. That's something else really to consider, because if your conversion rate dips, then yeah, definitely be looking into, okay, has that been across the board? And that's why search query data, reviewing that every week as well, is going to be pretty helpful. It just gives you that slightly more in-depth look into, okay, the conversion rate has dropped for you. Has it dropped across the board, or is it just for you? If it's dropped across the board, okay, then it's more of a macro impact on what's happening in your account. But if it's happened to just you, then yeah, you're going to have to do something to react. So, and actually what we've seen in the past is these macro impacts happen to accounts, brands react and they do more damage than good, right? Because they think they're being proactive and looking at their account often. So that's something also to bear in mind when you are optimizing your campaigns.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, the thing to keep in mind is, as Tom mentioned earlier, it's Mother's Day was just about a week and a half ago. And then at the same time too, it's almost the end of school year. So it's this kind of like weird dead zone where, people are kind of checked out in the US for a lot of stuff because they're starting to get excited about their summer plans. They're not really thinking about sometimes buying as much stuff, depending on what your niche is, of course, but especially if you're in something giftable, you probably just were doing really well because of Mother's Day, and it went down because it's not Mother's Day. All right. So Coco Melon says, Pope, I'm facing a hard time in onboarding brands. They just declined my application. Although I have lucrative investors, please, what strategy should I opt in? I don't know if that's about getting brands into why am I drawing a blank? Brand registry, or if it's something else. So if you can give us a little more context what that is, unless Tom or George want to jump in real quick.
I think he did follow up. He says that I know this session is for PPC, but I hope you would answer my question anyway. So I think it was directed towards an agency owner, but.
Oh, got it. So we've not announced it, but Stephen will have a AMA coming up here soon for agency owners. So if you're an agency owner, Stephen will give you his $20 million a year advice for free. So that'll be coming up here soon. So keep an eye out on the YouTubes. So Amit asks, my exact phrase, which I know it's the best keyword, doesn't generate sales, but uses the highest amount out of my PPC spend. Any recommendation? I have other PPC campaigns, which has 40% ACOS. So I'm assuming this has it's spending a lot of money and it's not generating what the other keywords are.
There's a chance that it's an incredibly competitive keyword. If it's your best keyword, it's probably the best keyword for everyone else. It's probably not a hyper relevant niche long tail keyword. And it depends if you've just launched a product for this as well. So I wouldn't get too hung up on trying to get sales and rank for this potentially short tail best keyword. It's probably best because it drives the most search volume and sales volume. If you're looking at data from things like Helium 10, if it's not generating you sales at the moment, you need to find the terms that are generating you sales. So if it's spending a lot and not generating you any revenue at the moment, I would pause it. I wouldn't necessarily negate it at the moment, but run a search term report on that campaign or any campaigns that you've got running against that product and see what you are converting for and try and rank for those and try and get sales for those. There's a strong chance that many of those long tail keywords include what you've identified as your best keyword that you've got an exact. So you will gradually start ranking for that best keyword, that shorter version of that keyword, even if you're trying to get sales off those longer tail variants. So you don't necessarily have to win the race tomorrow. Like, get those longer tail variants in there, get those keywords that are converting well for you at the moment, and try and rank for those and try and get sales off of those. You mentioned that you've got other PPC, which has 40% ACOS. I don't know if that's other keywords or other campaigns, but I don't know what your ACOS target is at the moment. So I'm assuming that's all right.
Yeah, let's assume 40% is acceptable, the way it was phrased.
Go for those. Like, follow the data with anything. Like, it's very easy to get hung up on a keyword that you think this has to be the keyword. Go with the ones that your audience, your customers are actually searching for and clicking on and purchasing your products for. Like, your audience and that data will tell you what you need to go for. As well as looking at the search term reports, and I think this is going to come up a lot today, is search query. Go through brand analytics, look at the search query report. As long as this product has been running for at least a month, you can look at last month's data and see exactly what people are searching for. The benefit of this over the search term report is it's telling you everyone's search queries organically as well, whereas the search term is only going to show you what triggered your PPC. So you might find extra search terms and targets in here that you hadn't even thought of, that you hadn't come across in your keyword research, regardless of what tool you're using. I would also say, I don't know what your campaign structure looks like in this. And going back to the previous question, if this is your best keyword, I'd make sure that it is in exact match, in its own campaign, with a generous bid and with at least some sort of placement modifier on there for top of search. But also, if it's not working on exact, you can also target phrase. Like, sometimes exact can be very expensive and very competitive. So there's no harm in kind of shifting that down a level and trying to go for phrase, because much like our aforementioned strategy of going for those longer tail variants that include your best keyword, phrase is going to trigger those longer tail variants anyway. So that can allow you to get exposure on that keyword that you might not necessarily have got on exact. And if you're worried about irrelevant searches coming through, just make sure you've got those negative lists full up.
Good stuff. Yeah. Go ahead. Please jump in.
Yeah, can I just add? We've seen a similar situation in recently where there was one campaign, one account that was relying heavily on one keyword, but when we actually looked through the search query data, we found 4 or 5 keywords that had a total of the total sales that one keyword had. And something else that we looked at is consider looking at the total click count to the total sale count, right, for that particular campaign, because there's some phrases which have a higher conversion rate from click to sale, and they are more they're less of a discovery keyword and more of a high intent keyword. So if you can find 5 high intent keywords to replace that one discovery keyword, then it could actually help you move up the kind of in terms of ranking and make better use of your budget. Bearing in mind you're keeping the conversion rates higher than the average on your particular terms that you're targeting. So that's one thing to bear in mind in doing this.
Yeah, that's a good point. And a lot of times people, I hear this a lot with sellers of like, this is the main keyword. Why? Just because there's the most search volume. Going after tennis shoe does not necessarily mean that your shoe would work best for the keyword tennis shoe, because that's high volume, but it's lower intent, more of a discovery keyword. And, your keyword that you're going after, if everyone else has 50,000 reviews and you have 30, why would a customer click on your listing versus the others? Whereas if you're going after something hyper relevant, they might be willing to look past the number of reviews because it matches the intent they're going for. So I think both of you guys hit the nail on the head there.
Yeah. All
right. So next up, we have Serge asks, how do you determine the entire advertising budget? Ooh. Big picture question. So we went from very specific to now big picture. And how do you allocate this budget to all the variety of advertising campaigns? So
okay.
How much do you spend and where do you spend it?
Yeah, so we've got a question of two halves. I'm going to attempt to answer the first one. I guess the easy answer is sometimes our clients tell me this is my advertising budget, and that's what I get. But that's not the question you've asked, Serge. So I would say the mathematical way to work this out, and you would have had to have been advertising already, or at least have access to some data, is to have an understanding of how many units you realistically want to shift. And then work out your click-through rate and conversion rate. Work out what the average CPC or suggested bid or your average bid for those keywords is, and then you can work it out backwards. So you'll know how many units you realistically want to ship, because hopefully you've got some sort of projection or target of whether that's an overall numerical value that your business wants to do, or you've shipped X amount of units to Amazon and you want to shift those in the next 30, 60 days before Amazon start charging you babysitting fees for those. So work out how many you need to shift, work out what your click-through rate is, work out what your average cost per click is for that, and then you'll know from your conversion rate exactly what your budget needs to be, because you know that some of those clicks aren't going to lead to a conversion. So yeah, that's the best way to work out what your advertising budget will be for an individual product. And then if you do that for everything, that will give you your entire advertising budget. In terms of how you allocate that to like the full suite of advertising campaigns that Amazon offers you, I think the best way to do that is segment sponsor product, sponsor brand, and sponsor display. I would say that the majority of your searches and sales are going to come through sponsored product campaigns. Like, think about how the customer is going to navigate. Most of the time, they're going to enter a search term and they're going to look through the search results. So that's where the majority of your budget will be. There's only one space at the top for sponsor brands, and potentially a video a third of the way down. No one gets to the bottom of the page and looks at those small sponsor brands in the squares that are, indiscernibly sponsor brand campaigns. So I would, let's say 70% for sponsor products. These numbers are just kind of arbitrary based on where we see the majority of the sales come from. 20 for sponsor brands, and then sponsor display, because where they appear, usually on a product listing, around 10%. So I hope that helps answer your question. But what I would do from there is just monitor that on a monthly basis. Like, don't stick with that as a hard and fast rule. That's a good entry point because that's just kind of based on aggregated data. But if you see better performance and stronger sales coming through a sponsored brand campaign, start introducing more for a start, because that will help increase that allocated budget share, and then just shift it that way. I think still the majority is going to come through search, but even within search, you're going to have to be careful as to how much of that goes through an auto campaign and a manual campaign. You're going to get a far better quality of search coming through the manual campaigns because you'll have control over those keywords. We've already talked about like advertising against the best keywords or the top keywords. Make sure you have some budget for those. It's going to be so much easier to rank and get visibility on those products if you've actually got budget going towards those keywords. It's very easy to spend a lot of money on an auto campaign. Amazon loves auto campaigns because you haven't told it what to spend on. So if you open up like a catch-all auto campaign with all your products, of course it's going to be the biggest spending campaign and have the most demand, but you're not necessarily going to get the best quality searches and the best results, because you have to remember it's one bid for every potential search that will come through, regardless of the profitability coming out of the end. So even within sponsor products, I would try and make sure that, if possible, 80% of your budget in the long term goes through keywords and 20 goes through auto. But also, there's always going to be an exception to every rule. You don't know what's going to happen. And I would encourage you to keep running those auto campaigns. Because Amazon loves that exposure. And if you're willing to spend in that avenue, you are going to see a potential boost to your normal placements as well.
Awesome,
Yeah,
George.
can I just also add follow the profit with the ASINs. So one, try and probably categorize your campaign so you're able to see, okay, where has majority of my budget gone and where have I generated most of my sales or most of my profit on an account level, not on just on a PPC level, but on an account level, right? because you might find that there might be some low-hanging fruits with certain ASINs that haven't reached their potential because you might have an account level budget in place, right? So some of the bigger, more demanding ASINs are taking more of the budget. So this is why it's really crucial that the way you structure your campaigns, and I'm just saying this, you probably haven't done this, but we have seen this from time to time where people have multiple ASINs in campaigns. Like you need to make sure that you have the different ASINs in different campaigns and it's segmented so you can actually very quickly see where your budget is being distributed in terms of spend. So that's the first thing. You're also going to get really good indications with budget limitations from Amazon, right? So they're going to tell you which campaigns have reached limits. This is something you should continue to monitor because during certain periods of the year, you're going to see more opportunities to scale. And then there's also going to be other more unexpected periods of time where you're going to generate more sales. For example, if two of the biggest sellers of the ASIN that you have run out of stock for some reason, or we had one company we worked with where they sold kind of eyelash. An eyelash product. Don't ask me a bit more details about it, but they sold an eyelash product, right?
Tell us more about the eyelashes.
The ingredients. Now, the ingredients in the eyelash of all of these competitors, they had one ingredient in the eyelash serum that got banned overnight, right? And Amazon just took every single one of his competitors out, which meant he was one of the only people allowed to sell that product. Overnight, we've seen just incredible amount of sales come through PPC and organic all throughout. So we were able to heavily react, get our keywords ranking really well. Because when you do end up getting your keywords ranking high, number one, you get the bestseller badge. It becomes very hard to knock you off that, right? Because you've got the velocity of sales. So bearing that in mind. So yeah, that's my point. This question.
Awesome. Amit asks, and this could be a controversial answer, I'm running out of stock scenario soon, basically about to run out of stock. Would you recommend pausing all PPC?
Ooh. First of all, I'd say don't run out of stock.
Yeah, exactly. Rule number one, as Stephen always says. Never
I've heard a few different angles on this because some people say increase the price of your product because then you'll slow down the sales velocity of that product, hopefully meaning that you've still got some stock that you can remain in the rankings. You've not gone out of budget where Amazon can potentially penalize you for that. I don't know if I'm a fan of that because you could completely change your rankings and your standings with the algorithm by changing that price so drastically, especially as you're increasing the price potentially to a price that is not something that you would be comfortable with. And it looks to Amazon like, you just don't align with the rest of the category, especially for the quality of your product and where you used to stand. So I would probably lean more towards doing something with PPC. I don't know if you need to completely pause it. I actually have an account recently where they went out of stock on pretty much everything. After telling me that they had all their stock, they went out of stock on pretty much everything, but they still had enough to potentially trickle through until they had to ride out those 6 weeks. But rather than completely pausing PPC, we left an auto campaign going, so there was still some level of discoverability and our top performing keywords still going in exact match. So they were still discoverable. We could still rank for those searches. People could still find them through the auto campaigns, etc. So they still had a presence, but we severely reduced the budget. So Amazon can still see in the algorithm that we still wanted to be there and we hadn't just pulled back. I guess I wouldn't pause completely. And it depends how long you're going to be out of stock. Like the last thing you want to do is be out of stock for like longer than 2 weeks. Otherwise, you're really going to have a negative effect on your ranking. And you will see those rankings for not only for each of the keywords dropping and potentially being unranked, but also the BSR of your product like severely diminishing. So I would try and make sure that you don't go out of stock any longer than 14 days if possible. Otherwise, you could do some irreparable damage and effectively have to, I don't want to say relaunch, but come in with those campaigns as if you were launching a product and be prepared to have like high ACOS, high TACOS again for that ride until you do repair that product again through PPC.
George?
I think Tom covered that one. So yeah.
All right.
And I guess before we move on, I would encourage you to get some sort of stock management tool or inventory management tool. There's plenty out there, like So Stocked or things like that, where it will tell you your trajectory for your stock, and as the pacing of your campaigns and your organic traffic changes, your stock could go from lasting 30 days down to 20 days if business picks up. So I would encourage you to get that sort of tool, and you can set up alerts. So as you get down to 50% of your stock left, you can then place a new order. So and keep an eye on, it sounds weird, but keep an eye on world news, because things change. Like there are wars going on, there are like restrictions in travel, and things like that. So keep an eye on those things so that you know that, okay, if a big world event is happening, maybe I should order more or get my order in earlier, even if I think I've got some stock left. I think a lot of people did learn the hard way, because it happened to everyone when the pandemic hit. Like all of the ports were shut down. There were like a few routes, and then we had the Suez Canal issue where like no boats could go through because someone decided to try and parallel park in the Suez Canal. But so I would encourage you to get that sort of tool to even avoid having to, I guess, ask this question and deal with those consequences. But we know sometimes it's unavoidable, especially if you try and launch a product and it overperformed from what you were expecting, and all of a sudden those 10,000 units you thought were going to last 2 months are gone in a couple of weeks. So
yeah, it's going to be so hard to figure out inventory these days, especially when, it's like, it used to just be, just send in like a container or two. It could be like a year's worth of inventory for a product. But now it's like, you get slapped if it's in there too long. You get slapped if you don't have enough now, which is crazy.
Yeah, Amazon will charge you for anything, whether it's good.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. So Karan Singh asks, hi guys, how do you interpret the search query performance report, search terms, and brand analytics? Specifically the search query score field. How do you interpret the score? What does it mean? George, I might cue you up for this one first, because you've brought up search query performance a couple times. So I'll put you in the hot seat.
I do love this question.
I guess the way, what did you say?
I said I do love this question.
Okay, good. Well, I'm loving the fact that we're getting more questions around search query stuff, because this is something that not enough people look at. So actually, Tom, I'm going to let you start, because you quite good, and then I'll add to it. That's okay.
I'll tell you what, I'll cut you a deal, George. I'll answer the second part of the question, so relating to the search score, and then So you have to determine the difference between search query score and search volume. So the search query volume is going to be telling you like the number of times that query was shown during that selected period. So that's your impressions, so to speak, or how many people, how often that was searched. The score determines the quality of that search. And just because something has search query volume doesn't mean it's a good term. Like it could be like an irrelevant term completely. It could just be on the cusp of what my product is. You were talking about tennis shoes earlier, Kevin. Like we will have hyper specific and hyper relevant keywords for our tennis shoes. Maybe they're a certain material or a certain size or a premium product, and we're not going to be relevant for every search that comes through. Like we could appear for shoe, but shoe could be anything, or it could be sports shoes. That could be for football, for soccer, for tennis, etc. Actually, tennis is what we were talking about. But the search query score is going to tell you like performance from best to worst. So even though that search has come through, which of those are actually performing? Which of those are getting the clicks? Beyond that, which of those are getting the add to carts? Beyond that, hopefully, which ones are actually getting the conversions? So I would lean into the search query score and actually use that as a guide to how relevant that term is for you. You'll actually even find some secondary, tertiary, and potentially what you thought were irrelevant keywords that you could actually target there. And I am going to dive in, George. I know you passed over to me, but like, how do I interpret search query? This is something that like we at Clear Ads have really been trying to dive into. I still think search query across the board is underutilized. And I think even those that utilize it aren't using it to its full potential. For the past 3-4 months, we've really been trying to abuse the search query. I shouldn't say that because Amazon are giving us the data to use. I think everyone should be using it, but like really trying to understand what we can do from that data that others aren't. It's not as simple as just using this as a more in-depth search term report that is showing us what converted organically as well as through PPC. It's not just a tool to do additional and supplemental keyword research. It is for that, and we've already mentioned that on this call. But there are so many different things you can do, and we've managed to build sheets with formulas that will effectively give us unique columns and data points that aren't on the search query itself. So we're able to see at a quick glance with these formulas, like which of these terms are growing in brand share. So you don't just have to take a search query data set from a particular month. I'd recommend that you take it for, right, we're in May, we're about to go into June. So when June rolls over, take the search query data set for May, but also take the search query data set for April, or even better, May last year. So you can compare how you've changed year on year, or depending on your industry, how you've changed month on month. And you'll be able to determine, like, are you growing in brand share? So what you want to look at is they very kindly, as well as showing you how well you're doing in impressions for that search query, they'll also show you against the rest of Amazon how many impressions that served, how many clicks that search query got, and how many you got from that. So you can work out, like, are you growing in brand share for a certain keyword? If yes, I encourage you to keep advertising on those terms. Make sure you've got those terms somewhere in your listing. If it's like the best keyword for you, make sure that's in your title. Make sure that's in your bullet points. Make sure it's in your images. That sounds weird, but Amazon's AI scanning technology, even if you've got terms in an image, and I'm not talking about on the back end for, like, I can't remember the special terminology, but you can name an image on the back end.
Oh, like the alt text?
Alt text, that's it. Yeah. Thank you. My brain had gone. It's gone past 5 here in the UK. But if you have literal text in your image, that can be scanned by the algorithm, and you can start to rank and appear for those. It's odd. I only learned this recently, but like, get it in your images if it's a best performing keyword. It's obviously going to have to be some kind of leeway on that, because you can't have every single best performing keyword in your A+ content, otherwise it's just going to look weird. But do your best to at least get the best one in there. But you'll also be able to identify those that are decreasing in brand share from the same formulas, just flipped. Like, you can see that, let's say this search term had 10,000 impressions, so, or yeah, like 20,000 search query volume. In April, you had 80% of that. Now you've got, in May, 60% of that. So you can identify that you're decreasing in brand share. Even if the figures didn't stay the same, you can like work it out with percentages, because there's always going to be new people coming into market. There's going to be new products coming into market that can like dilute that brand share. But if you identify something that's decreasing in brand share, that means that you can start making sure that you're bidding for those terms and potentially even get those into your listing as well. Some other things you can determine from that as well is, like, you might see that you've got high converting keywords, but you've got low sales on them. It's worth testing those as well. You might not be able to maintain those high conversion rates, because some of those search queries might say you've got like a 70%, 100% conversion rate, but you might have only had 2 clicks. It's still worth testing those. You might see the conversion rate drop down to 20, 30%. That's still good. But if you're getting more clicks and more sales on that term, it was worth it.
Yeah. Can I just add to that?
Please.
So Tom is much better at providing detailed answers. I'm just very short and snappy. So I'll just add additional things to what he said. I think the most basic thing that you should be looking at is, where is the conversion rate for, where do you have the highest conversion rate compared to the competitors, and where is their low market share? In terms of sales share for a keyword. They're the big opportunities. So I would avoid looking at the score and where you rank there, and more on those two things. Another thing that you can also do to interpret this data is you can kind of recollate all of this and go, right, let's put it all together and let's compare it to this time last year. This time last year, overall, has there been a decline in total impressions? Has there been a decline in total clicks? Has there been a decline and total conversions, and where do you stand with that? If you've been increasing during that decline, then you're taking into someone else's market share. Brilliant. If you're remaining the same, still, that's very positive. Or if the market has been growing 50% and you've only been growing 20%, then you're missing out on something. You're not doing something right. So it allows you to kind of have that much more holistic approach going down that route. So, but yeah, I think Tom basically mentioned everything else really well with this question.
And one other cool thing that we managed to do with search queries, obviously you can see in some of the columns the purchase price change, like the listing price change of a product. But you can also see how often the price was changed for a product against a certain keyword. We're not talking bids here, we're talking the listing price. You'll be able to see on average as a percentage, like that price change across the category. Did it go up? Did it go down? When people searched for a search term, for example, I'm just going to throw one off the top of my head, like red scarf. Like when someone searches for that, the products that appear in the search results on average, like, have they gone up in percentage or down in percentage? That's something you need to look at as well. We ran one for a client a couple of weeks ago, and we could see that for the purchases across all of Amazon for that search, like everyone had been changing their prices on average. Yet when we looked at the brand purchase price change column, which was for our brand, for every single keyword, nothing had changed. So our brand had not kept up with the times in terms of like optimizing the price and trying to be more competitive. They just maintain the same, because we find a lot of people just get stuck in their ways. Well, it worked when I first launched it at that place. Like same with your listings. Like the price was fine when I launched it there. Why would I change it? My listing was fine when I launched it. Why change it? My keywords were fine when I launched. Why change it? Like you need to adapt with the times. Don't be too reactive, which is why we were saying don't always react to 7 days. But if you notice the rest of the category is gradually reducing their price and you've got the same sort of product, there's not much difference in quality, maybe you have a unique selling point, you can't be $10, $15, $20 higher than the competition if they're being more competitive. I know that opens up a whole other question of how do you deal with that if you've got margins to observe, but yeah, that's another thing that you can look at.
Can I just say one other thing I want to add as well is try and check this every week. So have a look at the search query data every week to review the previous week as well, because you might start to notice unusual trends, right? So you might start ranking organically for a potential term that you didn't even consider. So about a few months ago, there was one particular brand that we're working with. They clean carpets. Their products clean carpets, but then all of a sudden they started ranking for and converting really well for that solution, cleaning sofas, right? So instantly, we were able to go back to the brand and say, look, just use your product and start, selling it as it cleans sofas, which it could. The chemicals, he's a manufacturer, so the chemicals in there could clean sofas. So completely structured the campaigns. So the product, created a new variation and one that had clean sofas. That did really well. And also we started adding those keywords as well, those product clean sofas. So that was one example. Another example is there was a particular supplement, a vitamin supplement that we work with, that for some really weird reason, it got like really high conversion rate for the term blood pressure, lowering blood pressure. So that was unusual. I didn't understand it, so I just Googled, and it, your fruit and veg, reduces your blood pressure. And when actually their term appeared on ads, it was very unusual because there were devices all over Amazon about reducing blood pressure. And there was one supplement brand that helped reduce it, and it was a very bright, distinctive color. So very eye-catching. The click-through rate was great. So this is how you're going to get a bit of an edge on everyone else. If you're looking at those trends, finding those differences, and actually going down that route.
Yeah, I love what you said there about like just repurposing your existing product. If that is a popular solution that someone needs your product for, just produce it again with a new label. Like, you're not lying to anyone. You are selling a sofa cleaner, even if it was intended for something else. Like, do it, because you're probably likely to have a better conversion rate. If someone is searching for sofa cleaner, they see a product with sofa cleaner written on it, they're more likely to buy that than click through to another cleaner, look through the bullets and see, does it also clean sofas? Like, cut out the middleman and potentially increase your unit sales by having a second product that does the same thing. We also had another one, George. I remember we were selling like dental chew toys for dogs. They were like dentist sticks. I think they were like made of some sort of antler or something like that. But we were finding people were also searching for like teething toys and things like that. This wasn't intended as a toy. This was intended for like oral health of dogs. But because so many people were searching for that, I was like, well, this actually is both. Can be a teething toy, but also clean the teeth or give the dog better breath. And it was like, that allowed us to tap into a completely new campaign structure with completely new keywords that the client didn't even know that was what they were making the product for, because it wasn't, but it's now been adapted by the shoppers. That's what they want to buy it for, as a toy. Maybe it's more natural because it's not made of plastics or rubber. It's not toxic. It's not going to destroy the planet when it ends up in the ocean or on a landfill site, because at one point the dog's going to finish eating it, but it's still a chew toy. So there are so many different things you can learn from the search query.
Good stuff. All right. So Tom, according to Coco Melon, the AI cartoon channel, who also is a seller on Amazon. We confirmed that earlier. Tom, you're explaining very comprehensively, and George, you're adding good points. Grant said using the search query reports to look at low impressions but high converting terms is always a good win to know where to increase the impressions. And Patent Finance says like and subscribe. So I'm going to agree with Patent Finance. Please like and subscribe if you're not already. That's very much appreciated. All right. So jumping back around to get to some of these other questions. What strategies do you suggest when running a phrase match campaign for products that have variations? So this question comes up every now and then. What's the campaign structure like? Do I use the parent ASIN in the campaign or the child ASIN?
The last sub question is very easy. You can't advertise the parent ASIN. You can only advertise the child ASINs. I don't even know if my answer is going to be controversial, because I guess everyone does things differently. Like, if you don't know which variation is going to sell the best, don't try and guess. Like, don't just try and pick a color or pick a size or pick a design. Advertise them all and then find out which one actually sells the best from the demand. Like, you'll see the spend naturally go in a certain direction and the sales go in a certain direction. I'm currently advertising a shoe brand on Amazon, and they have multiple styles, but they also have multiple colors. We've advertised all of the colors, and we probably could have guessed that the simpler colors would have worked best because they go with every outfit, like the blacks, the grays, the beiges. But also we were surprised that because we're moving into different seasons or the different uses for these products, whether it's parties, bridal parties, etc., or like birthday parties, we were seeing lots of those pop colors coming through. So like the vibrant yellows, the pinks, like we just don't know why people are going to use this. So we could have risked just advertising the simpler colors, but it meant we would have missed out on that huge exposure we can get from like advertising those less likely to be purchased colors, like the bright yellows and the bright pinks. So I would encourage you to advertise everything to start with. The data will always tell you where the demand is. Like, you don't have to keep these running for too long before we discovered that, yes, black at size 8 to 9 for women is the best variation to go for. But we were also surprised to find that yellow, once again at size 8 to 9, was a very popular color. And we can segment those. Like, most people aren't necessarily going to be searching for color, but you are going to get search terms coming through for color and different variations. We then set up a completely separate campaign for yellow because we knew that was a popular color and was likely coming from the searches of people looking for a specific color, maybe to go with the rest of their outfit for a party, whether it was a big birthday or the reception after a wedding or something like that. You just don't know. Whereas those who are looking for something for an everyday outfit might not necessarily search for a certain color. They'll just search for women's shoes in a certain style and a certain size. In terms of bringing that back to the first part of the question, like what strategy do we suggest when running phrase match campaign that have variation? Like, I would still target exact. Like, don't ignore exact match. Phrase match is going to introduce more of that more of that search to you and increase your exposure there. But with the campaign structure, I would make sure you separate branded and unbranded terms as well. So to start with, separate branded and unbranded and negate your branded terms from your unbranded so that you're not convoluting the campaigns there. The branded search is very easy to convert on because that's what they were looking for. It allows you to then have a smaller budget for your branded search, because chances are if someone is searching for branded search, even if you don't appear in the sponsored slots, they're probably going to scroll and try and find that. It takes a lot to convince someone to change brand if they have run that branded search. So you still want to have some presence, which is why I'm saying like at least have some budget going towards branded. Negate the branded from your unbranded so that anyone who is searching for those unbranded terms comes through that unbranded campaign. And yeah, that budget hasn't been wasted on the branded searches coming through, because they will find you through the branded campaign, or at least organically anyway. And also separate your match types out. So you've got branded, unbranded, but also have branded phrase, branded exact, unbranded phrase, unbranded exact. It might seem daunting to start with to have such a wide campaign structure, but it will get wider as the research comes in. Like at this point, we've just got every variation in these 4 campaigns already. But if you start to see particular color searches come through, that's when I would encourage you to break out that color into its own separate unbranded campaign on phrase, and then exact, and then branded versus unbranded. Anything that is just kind of sitting there, trickling sales, you don't necessarily need to break out or worry about. But those popular colors that you didn't expect, you can break those out. Those obvious colors that are demanding the majority of the budget. So if you're selling shoes, the blacks, the grays, the beiges, the everyday colors that we can take to work and go with every outfit, those need to be in their own campaign as well, because of the amount of budget they're going to absorb. They're not going to give anything else in that campaign a chance to breathe. However, we're not going to know that until we set up that campaign. Unless this is a seasoned account and you're launching a new product line and you already know that size 8 to 9 works best for you and those monochrome colors work best for you, then if you're launching a new product, then you can already kind of get an idea of what that segmentation is going to look like. And don't be discouraged, as we've already mentioned earlier, if you've got a search term that's demanding most of the budget, like set that in its own campaign as well. So you can start quite wide, and then you can see how that campaign structure naturally increases as you see the data coming through, as you see certain variations and certain keywords start to perform for you.
Good deal. All right. So I'm kind of skipping around here. Karan asks, I struggle to ensure that keywords I'm targeting in campaigns are not already currently in other campaigns. Is this something that's not a big deal or something to avoid? Because you hear people talk about like deduplicating and stuff like that. And then other people say like, don't worry about it. Amazon will just pick the best one.
Depends if we're talking about one product being in multiple campaigns. If I'm worried about the same keyword advertising the same product across multiple campaigns, I would say it is something to avoid, because you don't want to start outbidding yourself and confusing that algorithm and potentially driving up your own CPC and causing a higher price on that campaign because of your own undoing. However, if we go back to the previous question and we've got multiple variations, or potentially even multiple products, if you've got different products that would match that same keyword and they're not different variations, you then have a chance to turn up in search multiple times and dominate that space. I've got a brand that refuses to do variations, even if they are technically variations, and the only variation they do is size. And naturally, when you get to that page and you need to change the size, like, you know that you need to do that when you go shopping, look through small, medium, large, or 0 to 6, 6 to 12, etc. But when we're talking different patterns, different colors, this brand has a unique listing for everything. So if I was to search for winter scarf, instead of finding one listing in the results, and then when I get there, not only do I have to choose size, but I have to choose style and color, they can appear multiple times in the search results with the different variations. So instead of me appearing once and then all of the competition, I'm there like 10, 15, 20 times with all of my variations. Well, they are variations, but they are all their own unique parent listing. So at that point, I am not worried about targeting that same keyword across multiple campaigns because I want multiple products to appear in one go. So it depends how you've set up your account, and it depends how many different products you've got that you're willing to appear for this keyword for. So it's a bit of a catch-22, but if we're talking from that angle I mentioned earlier of you're worried about one product being in multiple campaigns and potentially setting up a new campaign that has that same keyword, especially if we're looking at search term reports monthly and thinking that search term triggered a keyword, I better add that in. Or you're looking at search query and you notice that you're growing in brand share, or you've got a really good click-through rate or good conversion rate and you want to add that in. Yeah, it's hard to remember sometimes which keywords you got, but there's a few ways you can check. If you go to the targeting tab, this is one quick way to check. Disclosure, it will only check sponsored products. Sponsored display is not relevant at the moment because it's not keyword targeted, but it won't check your sponsored brands. Type in that keyword and it will show you every instance that it appears. I wouldn't worry if you've got it on different match types. So if you've got the same keyword, broad, phrase, exact, well, naturally, that's going to be 3 different instances. But you can also download your account as a bulk sheet, filter for that keyword and see how many campaigns it's in at that level, and that will give you the sponsor brand level as well. And I would only pause those that either have like maybe 0 spend or 0 sales. You might see across 10 campaigns the same keyword, and in half of those campaigns it's got spend and no sales. Then you've got authority immediately to pause those because it's done nothing for you, and just leave it in the campaign. Follow the data as always. Yeah, I can see Grant has agreed in the chat. Let the data lead you. So yeah, keep it in the campaign that's working for you. And if there's a match type that dominates, like we always expect exact to work the best because that's the exact term and usually it helps you rank better. But more and more I'm finding even phrase match is sometimes cheaper and leading to more conversions for my campaigns. George, it looked like you wanted to top up.
Yeah. Can I just add as well? So if you've got the different match types like Tom mentioned, if you've got broad with phrase and exact, try and have the exact term as a negative exact in the broad, just so you're not cannibalizing on the sales. And if it is for one particular ASIN that you are sending the same keyword, wouldn't really advise it, because like even if you're using tools where you've got rules set up to bid certain amounts, it just will mess with everything. So try and have it so that, for one particular ASIN, if you're going to go exact and have that term, don't have that term in multiple campaigns. And also another thing to bear in mind is you can have that same keyword on the sponsored products and also on sponsored brands, because that's a completely different placement. So you're not cannibalizing on the sales.
Yeah. All right, good deal. All right, so next, this is probably going to be our last question here.
Okay, make it a good one.
All right, make it a good one. All right, so launching first products. We're going to set this person up for success here. What is the average range I should expect to spend a PPC campaign at $50 a day budget on a very high competitive subcategory where bids are about $1.50? Should I stay away?
I'm going to be brutally honest. I'm going to say yes, stay away. If you've already identified that it's a very highly competitive subcategory, $50 a day is not going to get you very far at $1.50 a click. If my quick math has served me well, I think that means you're going to get 33 clicks a day if you can maintain it at $1.50. You have to understand why that category is going to be competitive. Have a look at the brands that are in that category. Like if you're dealing with like market leaders, high street brands that are in brick and mortar stores and advertising across multiple channels like Walmart, Target, socials, then that $50 a day isn't going to get you very far. It's a good starting point. I don't always even start my campaigns at $50 a day, but I know I've got multiple campaigns being set up for that launch. So is this the only campaign you're going to be running at 50 a day? You're going to have multiple campaigns, and then you need to divide that 50 by the auto, the broad, the phrase, the exact, the PAT targeting, the sponsored brand, for example. Then that's really going to limit the amount of exposure and clicks you're going to get for your 33 clicks a day. So on the limited information I've got from this question, I would stay away. And I'm interested to see what you two have got to say, if your opinion would differ.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. There's not so much you can do, because I mentioned this in the presentation I did the other day, Kevin. But there's two components when doing anything with PPC with any brand. It's like, one's the conversion rate, but also the other one is the velocity of sales. So to see any real movement, you need to be getting a good number of daily sales that match up with however competitive the category you're going into is. So one approach that you could take if you were completely limited to $50 a day and there's nothing else you can do, is you want to look at those keywords that are not the most high in demand. So if there's some terms that are very long tail but very relevant, then having some exact match campaigns to those ASINs might help as well, because ultimately at the very beginning as well, you're trying to teach Amazon what is relevant for that particular ASIN. So you want to make sure you're giving the best signals possible, and that might be kind of a good approach to. Well, that would be a good approach to take, but yeah, we also don't know how competitive you're talking as well, so it's very difficult to know what $50 a day can do.
Right.
Yeah.
But when in doubt, start more laser. My personal opinion, start more laser focused, and then kind of work your way up. Because again, if you have 0 reviews, or you went into Vine and you got 5 reviews, and everyone else has 5,000 or more, then especially with that main keyword, don't worry about what is the main keyword that has the most search volume. What is going to get you the most sales?
Yeah.
And at the lowest price.
And I think another thing to just mention on this as well, and this is from our experience working with brands, is if you're going to have those limitations in place of pay-per-click, you want to make sure you're giving yourself the very best advantage. So ensure that your listing is completely up to scratch. I mean, better than anyone else, or has to be at least as good. Like if you've got 4 or 5 images, it's not going to cut it, right? With the budget limitations that you have, if you've not really fleshed out your bullet points and you haven't provided detail, because ultimately when you're launching your product as well, Amazon's going to take the information you put within the description, within the bullet points and the title, to understand what your product's about. So you want to kick off with the very best possible start. So make sure that you have that part really honed in, and that might give you just a bit more of a push.
Yeah, I definitely agree with taking advantage of like the budget you've got. Amazon doesn't know what your product is when you're launching it. Like, regardless of how good your listing is and what category you've put it in, to them it's just a load of numbers. Like, you know what your product is. So like, if you've got a restricted budget, avoid the auto campaign, avoid the broad campaigns, avoid those best keywords that have the highest search volume. Like, find the keywords that are hyper relevant to your product. In the early days with that restricted budget, teach the algorithm, teach Amazon what your product is, because there's a lot to be said for like relevancy of your product from clicks. So if you're selling, your product is orange and it's size 9, like get those keywords in there. If it's for a specific use case, get those keywords in there. And then as you've taught the algorithm, as you start to get sales, as you start to rank for those keywords, as you start to get reviews in, then you have a lot more wiggle room to start getting broader and broader and broader with the keywords and targeting that you introduce into the account.
Awesome. Great answers there, guys. We're going to have to close this down, but first, I do have time for one more question, which teed up the question I was going to ask is, how would you like folks to reach out to you guys?
There's a few ways. So I'm available on LinkedIn. Like, you can easily find me under Tom Waghorn on LinkedIn. If you search for Clear Ads, you'll find all of our employees. So you can find myself and George through there. We've got this lovely QR code. Thank you, Kevin, for showing that, which you can go through to, which I can only assume goes through to one of our. Oh, it goes through to school. Awesome. Brilliant. Yeah. George, tell them more about the school community.
Yeah, so we found that there's been a lot of questions that people have asked and they wanted a bit more follow-up. So what we've decided to do is we've decided to create a community online, and there's a classroom section that covers PPC and what we've discussed in a little bit more depth. Someone mentioned something about launching. We have a complete webinar session on the launch strategy, how to know what keywords to pick. There's a whole range of information there. At the moment, we are just limiting this to Amazon brands, but we will open it up to consultants, agencies, and etc. So if you can reach out to us directly, you can DM us on there, but also clearadsagency.com is where we're at. And if you put an inquiry in and say that you want to talk to us, we'll be happy to jump on the call and discuss further.
Awesome. Well, thank you to our guests, and thank you to everyone who's watching. Great answers today, guys. And I think everyone really just enjoyed the discussion. And if we didn't get to your question, it's not anything personal. We just ran out of time. But join us again. We will not be here next Tuesday because I will be out of town, but we will be here first Tuesday of June. It's hard to believe we're already almost talking about June.
Yeah.
So.
Halfway through the year already. Yeah.
I know, it's crazy. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having us, Kevin, and thank you for everyone for your questions.